Okay, it's officially 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, sorry, and so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to the First Friday's Faculty Webinar series for our on-campus faculty, and today's topic is flipping your PowerPoint for the student brain. So today we're going to take a dive into some neuroscience, and actually it's probably just a deep stroll through some shallow waters, but today I'm going to share 3 brain facts that demonstrate the complex workings of the student brain. For example, did you know that the student brain cannot process spoken words and written words simultaneously? Did you know that the student brain has a working memory limited to 7 pieces of new information? And did you know that the student brain must connect new information to existing information? So today I'm going to give you 3 strategies, and I'll showcase some examples and ways that you can implement those. And it's a way to take your PowerPoint from being just simply a slides filled with information to something that can be more usable to your instruction and student learning within the classroom. And those 3 strategies I'm going to showcase using, and I say PowerPoint, I mean any slides. For example, I'm using Google Slides. So when I say PowerPoint, I'm just meaning any type of slide platform. So today I'm going to show you how to add to your PowerPoints visuals, chunks and stops, and previews and reviews. So the visuals will address brain fact number 1, the chunks and stops will address brain fact number 2, and the previews and reviews will address brain fact number 3. So first in the chat, let me pull that up on my end. I'd like for you in one word to describe your PowerPoints that you typically use in your classroom during your instruction. So just put that in the chat there. So brief, highlights, no one says boring, so that's good. A supplement, good, good. So a question for you to ask yourself is, do your slides tell information? Oops. Hold on just a second. Or do they show information, tell a story, or take students on a learning journey? So showing while you're talking is a great way to teach with the student brain in mind, and we're going to look at some examples here today. So brain fact number 1 is that the student brain cannot process spoken words and written words simultaneously. So we're going to address this with visuals. For example, we've all heard of the 6x6 slide rules, and as I'm introducing this slide, your brain is trying to listen to my spoken words and read the written words at the same time. And we just learned that it's virtually impossible for the brain to do. And this is probably a good example of some of the slides you might be using. I know as a faculty member teaching on campus, I did this all the time until I learned that the brain can't process both written words and spoken words at the same time. But there are some times when we do need to use written words so that students know something in a very specific way, such as a definition, a formula, or a quote. So here's what you might do instead of your bullet list dump. So if there's a definition, you'll include it. Photosynthesis is the process by which green plants and some other organisms use sunlight to synthesize foods from carbon dioxide and water. Now your eyes probably followed along as I read that. And now your brain isn't fighting to try to listen to me and read the slide at the same time. So I introduced the slide by reading it word for word for you. So as the teacher, if you have slides like this where it's really critical that the wording is just right, when you move to that slide, read it out loud for the students. They'll be reading along with you quietly. Then that takes the equation of brain fact number 1, not being able to process both the written word and spoken word at the same time, and you can then talk about context, definitions, and examples. An even better slide might look like this, where you present your definition word for word, but you use an image that will help the brain start to process visually what it's hearing in the spoken word and seeing in the written word. And an even better slide might show a diagram of the concept, and this is obviously a diagram of photosynthesis at work. And I could then give the definition and talk about that particular concept. To find these types of diagrams when you're searching in Google, for example, and I'll showcase some other places you can find some really great visuals. But if you're on Google, you could search your topic and add the word diagram or infographic. So diagram or infographic along with whatever you're searching for. So I searched for photosynthesis diagram, and I was given lots of different options to choose from, and I just grabbed one and put it into my slide. An even better option might be to demonstrate the process of photosynthesis with an animation. So you can add the animation, you can turn the volume off when you embed the video or the animation into your slide. You could leave the audio on if you wanted, but the brain can process images and spoken words at the same time. And that's 2 inputs, seeing and hearing, in 2 different modalities with images and words. And that means the brain can process the information even better. So a tip for finding these is to search on YouTube and or Google and search your topic plus the word animation. And you'll find all kinds of examples of things related to concepts you might teach. Now here's another example with just facts about a topic. And remember, the brain cannot process, cannot read the written words and listen to my spoken words at the same time, which is brain fact number 1. And you might also remember from earlier that our working memory is limited. Can anyone remember how many new pieces of information our memory is limited to? 7. Yep, thank you. So we have lots more than 7 pieces of information here. Although there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets, this really is for a student who's new to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. This definitely includes more than 7 new pieces of information. And this probably also violates brain fact number 3, where we need to connect new information to existing information. So when you think of a PowerPoint, think billboard. Pictures tell a story, pictures are relatable, pictures show scale, they show relationship, and they show context. One recommendation here is I had this slide with all of the information that I need to know that students are learning. So what I can do is change my slide to this picture, provide an introduction of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and take those bullet points that I had and put them down in the speaker notes. And that way, when I'm presenting the information, I still have those speaker notes to guide some of the things that I might say about the Leaning Tower of Pisa to introduce it to students. But while I'm talking, they're seeing a visual. They can see the people, so they can see the scale, the size, the lean, and they can see that there are other buildings around it. A lot of times students think there's just this tower out in the middle of nowhere that's leaning. That's not the case. So it shows context as well. So another way to bring this more to life is to add videos. And this shows scale and context. It makes it more real. It's visually engaging. It can prompt student questions that words or a static picture might not. And I don't know if you've seen this, but it's popular on YouTube that people are adding walking tours and driving tours of lots of different places. And for this one, there is sound to it, but when I embedded the video, I simply turned the sound off. I just wanted students to have an immersive experience watching someone walking up to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. There's lots of tours of different places. So if you teach a class and you have concepts related to places, locations, things, these are great ways to find and give students an up close look at what you're talking about. You can also start and end, decide where the video will start and end when you embed it. So you can like trim off some of the start or trim off some of the end. And that's what I did with this one. Videos can also help students visualize things that they might not otherwise be able to see. And this can be used, something like this could be used to ask questions of students instead of having a bullet. And I can't remember the name of this concept that it's showing here, but this is showing regular and irregular things happening in the heart. But instead of putting a list of bullets up to explain what those regular and irregularities are, I can put this video and ask questions instead. And again, I found this with YouTube. I searched, I believe I searched heart and animation. So some great places to find some animations, pictures, photographs, vectors, icons, is Pixabay, Unsplash, Pexels, Canva, and of course, Google and YouTube. The thing I like about, for example, Pixabay, it's free. You can sign up with an account, which will allow you to star and like groups or people who contribute. You can also contribute yourself, but it's a free account. It's open source, no attribution is required. It offers, if you do point students to this and you want them to cite, even though it's not required, it does offer a slide citation where you can copy and paste. But this site offers images, photos, vectors, illustrations, videos, music, and sound effects. Unsplash offers also a free account, and it's free, high resolution photos. It's lots of different contributors here, and you can find just about anything you might want. Pexels is just about the same. It's free, a free account, royalty free images, copyright free. It does offer a slide citation to copy and paste if you do want to give attribution to the contributors. And then Canva. Some of you are probably familiar with Canva. I use Canva for almost everything. And this is a great place to find images and create graphics, infographics, visuals to add into your slides. So in the chat, just let us know, what is one of your concepts that you teach on a regular basis that you could show in your slides rather than just tell? Inflation, absolutely, interesting. Checks and balances. A product life cycle, absolutely. Joint mechanics, yes. Great, so lots of great ideas there, absolutely. Okay, so brain fact number 2, and this has to do with the brain only being able to, the working memory is limited to 7 new pieces of information. And keep in mind, these are kind of like buckets. And for a student who's brand new to a particular discipline or course topic, their buckets are likely small. So if you think about buckets as someone who's experienced in your field, to learn new information about your field, your bucket might have more things in it. But a student is probably limited to only 7 new pieces of information, whether they're chunked or not. So think about it that way. So a lot of times we pull up our PowerPoint slide and we talk and talk and talk, and our students we know what they're doing sometimes, right? And I just wanted to put this in. I don't always use PowerPoint, but when I do, I'm interesting. So PowerPoint is for more than information or content, and we want to think beyond the lecture when we build our PowerPoint slides. So you might get a PowerPoint slide deck from a publisher. And the first thing I always do with those is I take the bullet information out of the slide and I put it right in the speaker notes. And then I start to create my slide with visuals that will help supplement that information. So think engagement and refocus your thinking as you're building your PowerPoints. Refocus it from what are the things I have to teach and what are the things I want my students to learn. So think about your content you need to cover today in a class and ask yourself, how can you chunk that into buckets that make sense? And for students new to a particular topic, we want to make sure those are small pieces of information. And then we're going to add slides that help you and the students stop, pause, and process the information. So you'll see in today's example, I've provided, if I were in a classroom, I would be doing things more engaging, maybe moving around the room. I would be having people raise their hand, ask questions, get together with partners and discuss some of the things we're talking about. But today I've simply used the chat feature, which allows me to stop, ask you to reflect, and ask you to share something. So I've tried to model that for you today on Zoom, and it's a little bit limited to what you might be able to do in the classroom. But basically, this is their time to allow their working memory to process the information. So you share information, you allow them time to process the information, make connections, organize it, and it will start to help them push that information into their short-term memory. And then you move on to the next section of information. So we're going to insert slides for engagement. We're going to actually add them right in. So we might have a PowerPoint slide deck that is, let's say, 15 slides of content. Again, we're going to try to make it as visually appealing as possible and as visually engaging as possible. But then we're going to add extra slides. So your slide deck might go from 20 slides to 50 slides or 20 slides to 30 slides if you're adding in your stop points. So this might be a great place for questions. You add slides in that provide maybe a case related to the information. Add in some situations and have students ponder what they might do or how they might handle it. You might have them do a think, pair, share, and that's for peer-to-peer engagement. That's one of my favorite techniques. It's low tech, it's easy to do. You just have students pause and think, and then they find a partner, and then they just share what they're learning. You might have them do a reflect and sketch, and this might be just simply for reflection. It helps those students who are more visual in nature to sort of start to sketch out what they're learning and start to make some connections. You might have them create a mind map, and that can be done on paper. You might have them partner together and do a mind map. And you might have them simply jot down what is something that's confusing. What's the muddiest point? And that can then be a point for reflective discussion where you have them share some muddiest points and have students who are in the classroom who understood that concept explain it. And then you can also do some reteaching with that as well. And I want to put in a little plug for the April 1st, First Fridays. It's CATS in the Classroom, and that's classroom assessment techniques. These are some classroom assessment techniques, and I'm going to share even more of those when we meet in April. So what is a unit that you could or you need to chunk into right-sized pieces? And David says, publisher slides, boring. Yes, absolutely, they're the worst. But it's a great place to get information. All right, so as you reflect on that, this is an example of one of these stops. So I'm asking you to reflect and start to apply. And like I said, if I were in a classroom, if we were in person in a room, I might ask you to think, pair, and share, and maybe even start to do a little bit of pre-planning. But think, pair, share is one of the quickest, easiest, most low-tech ways to engage your students. And that peer-to-peer engagement, that peer-to-peer discussion, we have ways as people who are experts in our field of explaining things. And maybe sometimes that is a little bit more too advanced for students when we explain it. Sometimes it's better if a student explains it to another student. They're putting it in their own context and in their own words, which can help people understand even better. So that's one of the great ways to use that. Brain fact number 3 is previews and reviews. So the student brain, as we know, has a working memory limited to 7 new pieces of information. So some of the slides you might add in, and again, I add slides right in that help me as the teacher remember that I need to stop. I also add slides in, so as the teacher, I remember to do some preview and review. So I might spend some time at the beginning of class or at the beginning of introducing a new topic. I'm going to ask, what do you already know about whatever the topic is? So this is a preview. This is activating, in the teacher speak, we say it's activating their prior schema, their prior knowledge. It can help increase their confidence. It can incite some excitement about what you're about to talk about. It primes the pump, and it just gets them ready for learning. And they may not realize it, but their brain will start to make some connections already before you've even taken that dive into the content. So you're just asking them, what do you already know about whatever your topic is? You might also ask, who remembers what we learned about yesterday? So now you're again priming that pump, you're reminding them kind of where you are in the instruction. Here's what we talked about yesterday, and here's how it's going to connect to what we're learning today. So you're helping students start to compartmentalize information in their brains in a way that makes sense to them and helps them make those connections for what they already know and what they're going to be learning. Another thing you might say is, what are some things you want to review today before we start? So what was a muddiest point from the last time we were together? Now that their brain has had time to percolate, I say, or ponder, to think about, to process the information that they learned about in the last class. Spend a little bit of time. You might have to do some reteaching, but that's okay because the goal is learning. And then at the end of class, before you let them go, you can ask them, what did you learn today? And you might have them do that in a think, pair, share. You might have them just pop up their hand, and you could call on people, and it can provide some discussion and further clarification. And students are rehearing some of the concepts in terms that the students are using. So it might help them understand that a little bit better. And then before you let them go, it's not always easy to remember this, but prime the pump for what's coming next. So you might even say, so after today's discussion, next we're going to move into X, Y, and Z. And that's a good time to tell, you're going to be reading this next chapter, and here are some important things to think about as you read it. So here's what's coming next. Again, you're helping students build that path and that see the connections for all the things that they're learning. So today we've addressed 3 brain facts, and we have 3 strategies that we can use to build in slides, build in visuals, engagement, questions, different application pieces into our PowerPoint. So I would like to know from you today, what is your number one takeaway? Preview and review. The chunks and stops, building in time to pause and reflect rather than plowing through. Absolutely. And I know that feeling of needing to get through the information. And that's sometimes hard to get past, but it is good to stop. More stopping points during a lecture to let students absorb information and ask questions. Absolutely. Good. So I'd like to put a plug in for our next First Fridays. I hope today you found it helpful and that you can take what you're learning and apply it to your instruction and focus on the student learning in your classroom. So next we'll be talking about cats in the classroom, and that's April Fool's Day. But we'll be talking about classroom assessment techniques, those low-tech, high-tech, easy, quick and easy, and elaborate formative assessments that you can use during your teaching to help both you and your students know if they're learning. So thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it, and I will see you in the next First Fridays.